Pecha Kucha 309, world building place by place. So, really, the things that I've got to do now are get a sense of architectural knowledge for the specific sets I have in mind for my manga, do my second compositional storyboard, and then it's just a page by page breakdown of, it's the final pages. So the first step of trying to figure out how to, draw these places is to, consider what have I already put in the book. So the first kind of blueprint for the one of the main places, which is the castle that most of the main cast live in, is to see what bits of that have already been kind of drawn in the background and how they relate to each other, and then to make sure that when I draw these things in the background that they look enough like a Sengoku Jidai medieval Japanese samurai castle that I'm not obviously bad at, replicating these things. So part of that has kind of been a redesign to keep in mind what it is one of these castles was meant to do, which was effectively lead invading troops around in a massive circle towards the main keep, where the defenders would have all the luxury of shooting down on them. That's where I am so far. It's kind of this awkward thing I don't really want to do, so I've got to do it piecemeal, bit by bit, unless and try and just avoid making it feel like it's work. Also, with my bison this week, I wanted to have kind of a focus on his cape a bit more. My cloth physics are terrible. I'm not sure they're any better in this, but I did end up putting in a lot more detail work in the background with this kind of little aquarium thing he's got going on. And I've just been using like the real G pen brush, which I think is just it's just a black G pen with texture kind of worked into the way that the brush leaves marks, much like the chalk brush. I've been finding it quite enjoyable to use. Some brushes I just use them and it's like more pleasant on a psychological level. I can't necessarily explain why I prefer them. G pen might be one of those. I also read a Daredevil. I bought a couple of Daredevil books just off the shelf many years ago, and this one's a pretty interesting contrast to the one I read last week, written by Bendis, and an artist I can only assume is from an unorthodox background as it pertains to doing comic books. The situation as such is that Daredevil has declared himself kingpin of Hell's Kitchen, and has kind of made it's like an urban legend where he's kicked all the criminals out, and it's kind of causing problems for other superheroes who live in New York, and in the Marvel universe that's most of them. Peter Parker, Mr. Fantastic, Doctor Strange, Luke Cage all kind of ambush him in the park to say, hey bro, calm down, and he's like, no, I won't calm down. I've taken charge of the situation, which manifests itself as Matt Murdock Daredevil fighting 100 Yakuza in broad daylight in front of an FBI surveillance team. After said attack, the Yakuza all get interviewed for questioning, which leads to a very entertaining back and forth between one of the lead criminals and the cops. I very much enjoy what it is and how it looks. I really wish I'd bought my books a bit more intelligently, so I've got what happened before and what happens afterwards. I also looked at my Samurai Executioner stuff again because, it's set in Sengoku Jidai, Japan. This could be very useful specifically for, wardrobe and set for my comic, because effectively I want my stuff to look like this. And it's, Samurai Executioner is the story of the executioner for the district manager of wherever it is he is in Japan. Actually, no, I think he's in Tokyo. I think he's in Tokyo, otherwise known as Edo at the time. And it's a manga for men, as opposed to boys. Very violent. It's got a lot of blood. Very small book. It's pocket-sized so that salarymen can fit it in their pocket and read it when they, are on their way to work. It's interesting that the book's been reversed for international release, and actually the plot inadvertently points out things like someone's holding their sword in the wrong hand, because mirroring the images means that people suddenly who were right-handed become left-handed. I'm a massive fan of things like Samurai Executioner and Lone Wolf and Cub, so obviously I'm enjoying this. Prince of Darkness was a film I saw. A lot better than I thought it would be. Like some of the John Carpenter movies I see. I've seen a lot of Donald Pleasance recently, which I've actually been finding quite enjoyable. I saw Demolition Man, which is probably the most typical Stallone action movie I can think of. It's a lot of fun. It's a Joel Silver movie. You usually know what you're getting, and when you're of a certain age like I am, these things just click. Videodrome is what's the name of that guy? David Cronenberg. Yeah, it's like a body horror, bizarre thing that's clearly not a movie so much as it's art, with James Woods as the main character, who kind of basically goes insane until it turns out it's really happening. It's not even worth explaining it, but it's interesting, although I don't know I'd call it good. I also came across a really interesting YouTuber who he's Korean. He uses a 3D sculpting pen, which is kind of like a glue gun that shoots out plastic, and he makes stuff with it. He's also, he's got deadpan kind of comedy that comes through even in the subtitles, but he's kind of like a jack of all trades and seems to know a fair amount about electronics, since he's kind of given the Sonic the Hedgehog statue like a working circuit, so that like the electricity is actually like a bunch of light tubes and stuff. Interesting guy. It's always nice when I find someone on YouTube who does something really well and shows what they do really well. It's very encouraging to know there are people in the world like this, and even more encouraging that YouTube will recommend me something of value once in a while. But I'll say no more on that. So that brings us to the end of Pecha Kucha 309, and I'll see you next time.